Not quite so much on this one. London is now officially on the French electoral map. In June, French people living here will be voting in elections for the National Assembly for their new very own deputy for Northern Europe. It's one of the reasons the socialist presidential candidate hits our streets next week, as Andrew Cryan reports.
The seventh largest French city is not actually in France. With a Gallic population thought to be larger than Lille, Bordeaux or Strasbourg, parts of the capital can look a bit like the other side won the Napoleonic Wars. Cafe owner Matt is at the heart of this community.
I would say probably 80% of my clients are French and either attend the French school round the corner or work for one of the French institutions, the embassy or the consulate, or just work, live in the area and come for a bit of French food and good coffee, I suppose.
And while you're enjoying your French food, why not pop round the corner and buy French political literature in the local bookshop? After all, in the coming weeks, the capital is set to become an unlikely battleground in this year's French elections.
Now this year, for the first time, French people who live abroad will be able to vote for MPs who represent foreign constituencies. Now, because there are so many French people in London, in one of these, Northern Europe, it's thought that at least half the constituents live right here in the capital.
Emmanuelle Savary, the candidate for Nicolas Sarkozy's UMP party, on the election trail in Kensington.
Are you French? Bonjour.
She's campaigning on issues where the French government's decisions have a direct impact on life in the capital, such as their provision of French schools.
French people, they like to educate their children in the French system. And it's not, for example, we've got the Lycée Charles de Gaulle just around the corner. It's full. You don't have any more space. You've got 6% of people leaving every year, and you've got more people actually coming back. But they can just accommodate 6% of new people every year. So that's a big issue for London.
But the capital's role in the French election is about more than just local issues here in London. Next week, this man, François Hollande, will be paying a visit. The socialist candidate for president is currently the bookies' favourite to become the most powerful man in France. But according to the London correspondent for French newspaper Le Figaro, the visit may be less for the voters here in the capital and more for the people back home.
I think it's important for him to get out of the country, to just get himself a little bit of an international stature as a candidate. And also London is a very important symbol because he's been keen on attacking the finance industry in a way in the past. And maybe he has to make up for that a little bit to show that he's not anti-finance like he appeared to be and like he's designated by his opponent Sarkozy.
Whatever the message he chooses to bring next week, Hollande is certain to be reminded of one quote from earlier this year.
Mon véritable adversaire. My true adversary does not have a name, a face or a party. He never put forward his candidacy, but nevertheless he governs. My true adversary is the world of finance.
So if he has finance in his sights, could this mean trouble for London's most lucrative and controversial industry? Or conversely, if he takes the fight to the world of finance back home in France, could London prove to be the winner?
If the French government and the new French president were to introduce measures that were seriously damaging to financial services in France, then Paris's loss could well be London's gain, and we'll be keeping a very keen eye on what happens.
Back in 2007, when Nicolas Sarkozy was just a presidential candidate, he chose the capital as his first foreign destination. Mr. Hollande will try and replicate that success.
Andrew Cryan reporting there. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Axelle Lemaire, who is the Socialist Party candidate for Northern Europe, and quite a constituency. What, covering 10, 11 countries?
Indeed, 10 countries in total, running from Dublin to Riga,
right.
And including Ireland, the UK, the Nordic states and the Baltic states.
But if you were successful, you would represent?
One seat in the National Assembly in Paris.
That's quite a campaign trail. Where are you going tomorrow?
So tomorrow I'll be staying in London to prepare Mr. Hollande's visit,
right.
But then I think I'll be visiting 5 or 6 countries in the next coming month.
My God, that's quite a campaign trail though, isn't it?
It is, with my backpack, travelling on EasyJet and Ryanair, taking the buses, trains, and that's, yes.
So do you think you have a better chance of picking up votes here in London than, say, Latvia? I mean, is this one of your key campaigning territories?
I mean, it is for electoral reasons because there are many French people who live in London. But then how are they going to vote? It's very difficult to tell because this is the first time it actually happens.
I was going to say, can you say, because they're expat, because they're business people, are they largely, who are here in London, are they not your natural constituency? Or would you expect the people here in London to be natural socialist supporters?
I wouldn't say that they aren't supporters. It's again difficult to tell. But what I feel when I meet French people in London is that there's quite a strong anti-Sarkozy feeling.
Right.
And it is true that there is a strong French community working in the city, but not only.
No,
the French
but are
people
you
are actually
coming
very
over?
diverse in London.
Are you coming over here and criticising our banks, which we love so much?
That's not the political message that Mr. Hollande wants to send. So if you're asking me about the world of finance...
Well, I was going to. My true enemy has no name, but he's in charge. My enemy is the world of finance. Does he still feel that?
It's not a feeling, it's a program. And when I say it's a program, there was a huge financial crisis in 2008. And the socialists in France feel that nothing has been done to tackle the real causes of the crisis. It could happen again tomorrow with the huge social and economic consequences for France, but also for the other European countries.
The Mayor of London there says, you just carry on saying this and attacking the financial system, because it'll mean all the banks will leave Paris and come here to London.
Yeah, but he's attacking the system as it works today, not the banks or the people working for the bank. And he's actually putting forward very pragmatic proposals about separating the investment and detail activities in banks, the financial transaction tax. But then what Boris says is what Boris says. It is, I'm sorry to use a French word, but quite a cliché.
Yeah, let's bring Tom Brake in here. I'm going to ask him to ask you a question in French, because you were schooled in France for 10 years, I'm told. No, not really, but you were schooled in France for 10 years.
That's true, yes, and in fact I got my first political experience in France because the president then was Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. It was at a time when the French farmers were burning British sheep. If you recall, they were setting fires to lorries that had British sheep in, so I asked him a question about what did he think, how well were the British sheep doing, and he was rather thrown by the question. But,
Karen Burke, what's your feeling about this constituency and this idea of representing, bringing these people together? Well, and Westminster, so part of your constituency, has the highest number of French residents.
Absolutely, and I'm exhausted listening to Axelle, because sometimes I complain when there's a signal failure on the Bakerloo line, and it's nothing, but I'm delighted to say that Axelle is in fact a constituent of mine.
Oh, right.
Karen is my MP.
Do you live here? You live in here?
Of course, I've been living in London for the past 10 years.
So
Yeah,
so you're
I'm a
campaigning
Londoner.
a lot more.
I
Right,
am
didn't know
rooting
that.
for her
Fantastic.
absolutely all the way down the line. I think she'd be a fantastic candidate. And I think what's very interesting is that there are an awful lot of younger French people who are working in London precisely because of the crisis of unemployment in Europe, who are, as you say, a very anti-Sarkozy.
Tom
as a
Brake
consequence,
wants to
and
know.
will be voting for you.
Tom Brake wants to know about your election expenses, all this travelling around with all these countries. Must be an enormous cost,
You're
mustn't it?
asking me about English sheeps, which I don't know much
No,
about.
don't answer about sheep.
right, you're not burning our sheep anymore.
No, I
so
promise
What about the
I won't.
expenses? It must cost a hell of a lot to try and campaign on this one,
It
doesn't it?
does cost. It's very regulated, actually, electoral expenses in France. The rules are different. We're not allowed to receive any private funding from companies or public organizations, for example. And there is a cap on expenses that we're not allowed to over.
Do you know what?
If-
Very
if-
briefly, because we're running out of time. Go on.
If you get elected as the Member of Parliament for Northern Europe, does that mean you'll have a constituency office, as we do in each of our constituencies, in each of those 10 countries?
Do you know what? I think there's scope for a follow-up. You've made that case. We'll